you get kids at 4, 5, 6 years old, yeah, you can develop those players. But at the same time, if you're the top team and you're playing better and people are noticing that and they feel like, oh, my child's good enough, then they bring them out to tryouts. And if they make it, they make it. So that's kind of it's kind of the nature of the beast. But you're exactly right about the having a rec side to build up. But just unfortunately for that area and the resources, it would be too hard. They have a rec league, of course, but what happens is if you try to just affiliate that one rec league with one club, unfortunately it would never fly. It would never work because there's like 5 or 6 clubs in the area. So in a perfect world, if you had the money and the resources, you could set up your own recreational program. And there was a club once upon a time that's kind of dwindled down now at this point in our area who had that mindset. They actually took almost anyone that tried out at, like, say, the U8, U9 level, and they would have house teams and they would just train them all the time. And then they would pick week to week which ones would go compete based on how they were doing. So they might have 25 kids in an age group. They might be going to play 9v9 and can only take so many. They would train those kids the whole time and they would kind of rotate different guys in and out and kind of keep trying to.
That's the model that my club works on. The problem that we find that we run into is, again, right, is a structure issue with soccer when the league prohibits us, right, or says, well, you can only field these kids. That's it. Give me your roster right now.
Yeah.
But that's the model that we're working with is, really there is no tryout. It's just everybody. And we'll never, a result of that will probably be that we'll never be winning those state titles. We won't be that club. What will be is that our club will be the one that develops those 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. We're trying to keep our players until like 12. And then some of our players, they'll come to your club, right? That's just, but I think the inherent problem is understanding, right? There's several different development phases, right? And I don't think it's very difficult once you get to the size you're talking about. It's very difficult to do all of them. And then you've got a structure problem there by the sounds of it and I think if I'm hearing you, you've got this recreational program, whatever that means, but you've also got 4 or 5 competitive or clubs, right, that those players are going to go to. So they won't affiliate with any one club. So then none of the clubs really go help that program, right? Is that kind of what happens?
Yeah, I would say so. And the best way to describe the recreational is it's more just like a one community park setting. All the games, you sign up and it's mostly volunteer coaches. Nobody's getting paid. It's kind of more your true, what you would call the grassroots, where it's just volunteers. Normally it's just T-shirts that they play in. They don't get fancy jerseys. There's no sponsors. It's a lot cheaper to play.
Is there anything wrong with that?
No, not to get, Yeah, no, there's not, honestly, just to get kids' feet wet. But I guess at the same time, though, it's a catch-22 because it can be, because if you get somebody in there that just doesn't try to do any work, sometimes having a bad coach can be worse than having no coach at all. You know what I mean? Because especially at a young age.
From the years I've been doing this, I've seen quite a few programs. By no way have I seen all of them, right? But I think there's a lot of good coaches up the ladder, like club level and middle level. I think there's a lot of decent coaches over here. I think where the biggest problem lies is the bottom of the ladder. And I think that is the typical, probably the difference between, Canada, US, and what we might, look to Europe or South America. I think, if you looked at that kind of club team coach, I don't think their coaches are, on average, that much better. Sure, if you're looking at a coach at Man City Academy or Southampton or something like that, yeah, sure, those are better. But your average guy that coaches the local team versus the US Canadian coaches at that level, I don't think there's that much a difference. I think where the huge difference is what you're saying is the rec thing, right, with the volunteer pair and the T-shirt. I think the average coach over there will definitely know a lot more about soccer, have more ideas about it, will definitely have played the game, will be immersed in the game. And over here, many of those people have zero attachment to the game.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It
I think
comes down to culture.
Yeah, and I think it's very hard to change culture, right? What we were talking about earlier, we're getting the kids, parents to introduce balls to kids earlier. That's difficult how do you change that? But I think if we wanted to improve the overall level, to me, the change has to start at the bottom. And somehow that rec club that you're talking about, someone has got to raise the standard of what's being offered there so that when they do come to you, you've got a player that has some basic understanding of the game at least, right?
Yeah.
Let alone skill-wise. So, hey, anyway,
And I agree with all that. And it's just a matter of, and part of that comes down to the money being in the way too. Everybody's wanting to I want to get as many players as possible. I want to try to make as much money as possible. But there are some in the area. Like we've got, if you go down south towards Bowling Green, it's closer down towards Tennessee.
Yeah, I've driven past there too.
They have, where for the longest time, they just had one club that was the majority for that area. And they worked hand in hand with the recreational program in Bowling Green. So they were doing coaching education for parents, for the volunteers, offering things up, running some sessions for them. So they have an idea, okay, this is what it should look like at U6. This is what it should look like at U8. So then when those players start coming into your select competitive club environment, whatever you call it, it makes a big difference.
If that's the way it seems to be set up, right? In Canada is a bit different. Like we tend to have these massive clubs and they do it all. They've got their own rec program and they're trying to do it all. Whether they're successful, is dependent on the club. But in the US, it sounds like we need more of that, right? More of these strategic partnerships where the club soccer will go help the rec soccer. But I hear many stories where they don't want help.
Or it's because you'll have 3 or 4 clubs in that one area
that are all trying to draw,
and they're all so it becomes cutthroat at that point. And it's kind of unfortunate because it can be the kids that lose, nobody else.
And again, right, that all goes back to, like, it's not really, I don't think so much. Sometimes it's the human part, the coaches. That's the structure, I think, that dictates that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we got, you were going to tell me what the difference you saw, right, with the mentality you said between your club players and your high school players.
Yeah, that was.
We got on that big tangent.
Yeah,
Louisville. So you were saying that the challenge you kind of have with your JV team and stuff is you see a difference. What's that difference in mentality from club?
Sure. So basically, so I kind of outline being with the club that I'm at. So it's truly the top talent in the state for the most part. It's still spread out some, but it's a higher level. And obviously when there's tryouts and you're taking kids from all over the state, now when you get to school, it's a different aspect because the kid has to go to school there. So the talent that you have is the talent that you have. There's nothing else you can do. You have
someone else's school?
No, now if you're a private school or a city school and you get kids enrolled to come into the city school because they're an independent, then yeah, that's kind of how they play that game. That's why, for example, our state high school, it's normally won by a private school. The championship for the state every year, it's almost won by a private school because they can actually go out and recruit the talent, give kids scholarships to come and play. And you're talking about high schools that if you wanted to pay to go there for an education, it's like college.
Right.
You're paying $40,000 a year to go to this school, whereas ours is, you just pay the county and city taxes, and your kid goes to school there, and it is what it is.
So I mean, again, right? That's kind of a byproduct of you being at this club that is attracting some of the best players, and then when you come to your high school team, your pool to choose from, or obviously, is a lot smaller. So
yeah, and there's a wide range from your top handful, and then you kind of go down. So it makes it a little bit more challenging. But then also, it's not always necessarily the skill.
Okay.
It's
the
tactics and
I was going to ask you, is it primarily the skill level, or is it also like kind of the understanding of the game that those players have?
Yeah, I would go 65-35 split, 65% of the understanding. But to me, that's also one of the most overlooked parts. But a lot of people don't dig into the tactics enough. They don't coach different situations, to whether it's transitioning and how your shape should look differently in offense versus defense. Everybody talks a little bit of pressure, cover, balance, and different things, but it's just on a more of an in-depth. But you see that if you go to your average game at a park this weekend, and maybe not where you're at, but you go and watch, and probably, for example, I watched a Halloween tournament. I had my first weekend off. Okay, we got a really nice sports complex just right down the road from my house. And
so you had a weekend off, and the first thing you wanted to do was go watch some.
Yeah, because I'm crazy like that. I love the game. I truly do. I watch games all the time. I study. That's why I'm on here. Discussing with you. We've just connected through Twitter. You know what I mean? But I enjoy discussing the game, and there's not a whole lot of people around here that you can do that with. But so yeah, I had a weekend off. My club's done. My high school's done. My son is still playing, but he had a weekend off. They play primarily their games on Sunday. He's actually in the MLS league, the MLS Next. It's kind of their rebranded.
Right.
What is the ED Elite Player Development Youth League, EDPYL or something like that. It's their new DA.
Okay.
So you guys have some teams in it from up there too, like your Whitecaps and stuff, I'm sure, unless they're strictly doing that Canadian league now. I don't know how to.
No, I think they're still in the MLS. I don't think they'll ever leave the MLS. But anyway, you saying about the game you went and saw at the park, like what?
Yeah, so I went and watched. It was mostly 9v9. They had just a very small amount of 11v11 games. But you can watch and you can watch through girls and boys games. Probably, I'm wanting to say, probably watched around 7 or 8 games that day. And I saw maybe 2 teams that out of that whole group, boys and girls. Okay, so 7 or 8 games, you're talking 14 to 16 teams. I probably saw 2 teams where you can tell that they had a game model and a philosophy and an idea of how they were wanting to try to play. Like they were trying to make decisions on the field.
Right.
It wasn't just kick it up the field every time. It wasn't clear it every time. It wasn't go long every time. It wasn't hit it down the line and try to dribble 3 people or send a cross in. Those type of things that you see what your average team play.
Why do you think you see that though? Like what do you think has got those players or teams to that point? Like why does it look that way?
I think it can be a lot of things. So we talked about culture. That's probably a good place to start because that starts at a young age. You had mentioned how a lot of kids aren't watching the game, or you have your parent coaches who maybe don't know anything or maybe coach baseball and they're just doing whatever. We talked about passing the ball back and forth with a 4 or 5 year old from 20 yards away versus trying to work on ball control and manipulation. So I guess, and it kind of just builds its way up the ladder. So you've got coaches who are coaching in those positions who maybe it's just not putting the effort in to understand the game on a global level, on a different level. You know, if you're setting the standard on American soccer or the average of MLS now, but well, I'll say this, MLS has improved dramatically in just the last handful of years, but it's still far behind. You know, yeah, I mean, think about it though. Think about uh, say you're watching the Red Bulls and Thierry Henry was still playing and they couldn't connect 5 passes, you know, and it was in the air most of the time.
Now he's coaching
Slowly,
Montreal Impact and they can't make
yeah,
5 passes.
yeah, but it's slowly overall, if you watch and pay attention, and this is just me even being a casual fan, there has been improvement for sure, but it's still a long way to go. So I think it's probably culture and then just not putting in the work to better yourself. But I could also
like what do you think about this though, Rob? Like, so you said you watched, whatever. Let's say you watched 10 games and there was only 2 teams. If those coaches, like, this is what I think sometimes, right, is if that's all they ever see, they have no reference point, right? They have no idea. And if there's only a couple of teams that have an idea or are playing or doing anything differently, how many of them look at that and go, what are they doing? I should go and look at, how can I do that, right? And typically at that 77, 99, right, it's going to be very hard to teach a bunch of kids to play a certain style, a different style of football. And I think the other problem is many of the times at that, I know it's happened to me many, many times that our team has tried to play the way that we want them to play and we lose.
yeah.
So,
And that's to be expected.
That's the other thing, right? Like me personally, I couldn't care less that they lost. I'm happy if they try and do the things that we as a team want to do and play, because I know that in 3-4 years down the road it will be successful. But I think for those other coaches on the other sideline, they're probably like, "What's this guy doing? Like, he's losing. Like, he's trying to play this way, and they're losing." So I think that's
But when's a better time?
Don't blame those coaches, right? It's number one, they don't see enough of teams trying to play, and then a lot of the time, the team that is trying to play is not as successful, right, against the style we typically have here.
I would agree with that statement, but that's where you have to so my approach has always been with that is to grab the parents from the very beginning and say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Don't shout instructions from the sideline. It's going to look like this for a while. We may lose. We're going to pass it to our goalkeeper. He may miss the ball and it may go in. It's going to happen. But if we don't do this now at 8, 9, 10 years old, how can you expect them to play that way when they're 12, 13, 14?
Maybe we just don't have enough people on those games that are as invested as you are, right? Or want to go through that process. I don't know. Like, I mean, because that is obviously the process that we need to go through, right? I don't really like the term parent education, but you got to be transparent with your parents, right? And I think the more they know what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, most parents are reasonable people. They'll be like, oh.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like too many people, I mean, because I'm a parent myself, and you said you've got a daughter that's playing, so you are as well. Yeah, I think it's more beneficial if you have them understand and on the same page. That way, if they understand how you're trying to look in a certain way that you're trying to make things look on the field, it's going to make a big difference.
I think it's the same, with the parents that are good kick and all this stuff. Again, I don't really blame the parents because I think they just don't know any better.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know that, my kid shouldn't just hoof it down the field every time it comes to them. Like, they don't think about it that deeply, right? And again, they're just because they haven't been involved or immersed in the game. So I think that comes back to the club, right? Or the coach or the leaders at the club to be communicating that more and be more transparent, right? Like, look, this is what we're trying to do. And like you said, this is going to be the results, right? Be ready for it, and then they can deal with it a bit better.
Yeah, and really should it be all about winning when they're that young anyways? The kids want to play and have fun. And if you're doing it the right way, there's going to become a tipping point where they start becoming competitive anyways. Once everything starts to click,
I think all
then
kids are
they'll start.
competitive. I think all
Yeah,
kids are competitive by nature.
by nature. Yeah,
I
sure.
think we kind of, I don't know. I think a lot of coaches use the term, oh, they're not. I think they confuse the term competitive with that ability, or the different level of desire to want to get the ball, win. I think all kids are competitive. Like, they all want to win the game. I want to win every game. I want to win the games too. I don't care if it's
Yeah,
a 3v3. I want to
yeah.
win, but I want to do it by trying to employ some of the things that we've been working on, right? So I kind of a long time ago started to get very little satisfaction if we won a game and played terribly and didn't try
That's
and play any good soccer, right? And
that's always been my mindset.
I started to get more enjoyment from seeing parts of the game where we were able to do, implement concepts and principles that we've been working on, regardless of the outcome and regardless of the score of the game.
I've had numerous times where I've lost a game 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, and have been happy with the performance just because, it would be one of those scenarios where we had probably 70% of the ball and had 15, 20 shots, and just the quality to finish wasn't where it needed to be. And then that team would literally have 2 shots the whole entire game and score both of them. And at that point, I mean, it's just,
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
you can still be happy
I'd
with the
rather.
performance. You want to win for
Yeah,
sure, but at the same time, you can. That's what was
yeah,
different for me with high school this year. Is I had an opportunity where I'm used to it being flipped, where my team is having more of the ball. They're the stronger side. They're controlling the game. They're creating a lot of quality chances, and then you get countered once, and you lose 1-0. So I had a game earlier in the year, and we did not look good at all. But it was our very first game out. I had some kids who were quarantined with the COVID shortened season. I only had a week with this group, basically. So we weren't anything what we were trying to be. And I'm asking them to do things that they've never really had to do before. And so, I mean, it was one of those situations where we got 2 shots the whole entire game, and we scored off a corner and won the game 1-0. And the other team was all over us. And I told the coach after the game, I said, hey, good game. You guys probably deserve the win. I hate winning like that, but that's part of this game,
Yeah, and I think it's adjusting at different ages, right? I think it's more important if the kids want to win the game, right? But it's like you said, even in that scenario, is trying to teach these young players that the performance and how they play.
I got to go back to something else. You had made the comment about the parents and saying, oh, good kick or hoof it and that kind of stuff that you hear. So when you're always on the coach's sideline and you're focused on the game and everything that's going on, you tend to shut out a lot. So when I was watching those games over the Halloween weekend and I was there on the parent sideline, I'm telling you, I could write a coffee table book of things that you hear on the sideline that would just be hilarious. Just the thing that the parents are shouting at the kids.
I think you hear a lot. I certainly over here, I hear a lot of stuff that's obviously been imported from other sports that make no sense to me.
Yeah. Or I heard one from this one team, one parent kept saying over and over at every corner, we can head it in, guys. And they took 4 corners in a row and they were all basically on the ground near post, thinking, well, you're not going to head in any of these chances. But also, I don't think you have to tell the kids, like, we can head it in. I'm pretty sure they know that. But I've always used an analogy with my parents about the shouting from the sideline. I said, just cheer your kids on. Cheer them on and cheer on the effort. That's all I want to hear. I don't want to hear telling them to pass it or shoot it or to do this and do that. I said, look at it this way. Would you like to be sitting in your office at work and then 12 people come bursting through your door and are like, type that, print this, write that, send this, fax that, email this, and they're all just shouting all at once? And then when it's the younger kids too, you get a lot of head turns like this, and they're looking at mom and dad on the sideline versus paying attention to what needs to be going on in the field.
Yeah,
I don't know if that culture is that bad where you're at, but I mean, around here, it can be
lucky.
really bad at times.
I'm lucky at my club because I've done what you said, right? Which we get the parents from day one, and we lay down the ground rules and what the rules are for their, not behavior at games, but we try and help them understand what's beneficial and what's not. And we've been doing it long enough that the new parent that we had it this year, right? The new parent that comes and is over the top and, woo, go Jennifer, yeah, and do this. Like, by the end of the game, they're looking around going, why am I'm the only one yelling this shit out, right? So the kind of group as a whole, our parent group is so good. They sit back, they watch, and generally, we send out for all the new parents that join, we send them out a little article, right, about why we want you to do what you want to do. And we have a pretty simple rule, right, which is we encourage all our parents to react positively to what a player has done. And I think that solves everything. So if you see a player has done something well, cool. Don't care, react positively to that. Clap, tell them well done. But you can't, we ask them to avoid telling a player what to do. Don't tell them what to do when they have the ball, and no negative comments based on, the actions they take. And that's really solved a lot of it for us. And then the second stage of that, right, is then to start, especially for parents that don't understand the game very well, like, why do parents always just say, yeah, great kick? Because they don't understand anything to do with the game, and that's pretty much their only, oh yeah, he kicked it and it went far, that must be good.
Yeah. And half the time that's the wrong reaction at that moment, the wrong thing that should have been done.
Yeah, so what we've tried to start doing is trying to start, again, being transparent with the parents and telling them at each age group, like, look, these are the things we're looking for our players to try and do. And when you see them do that, if they do it well, that's something we want to talk about. So a lot of my job now is I'm kind of, I don't even know what I would call it. I'm just like the parent pleaser liaison guy. So every time we have games and practices, part of my job is just to walk around and connect with the parents individually and just give them a quick, here, you know what, this is what we're working on with this group right now. So, hey, look, when you see your kid do X, Y, Z, you really can help me out by telling them he did a good job.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
right now
important.
with these guys, we're working on keeping the ball. So again, if he loses it, I don't care. But if he kept it, encourage that for us. Right. So we've started to try and, with our parents, is take them along on that little journey with us so that when they watch a game, they've got more than just, oh, he kicked it a long way or scored a goal. They've got more things that they can see in the game that their kid's doing well. And that seems to be making a big difference for us. I mean, I have, compared to other coaches I hear, I have very, very little, if any, parent issues.
Yeah. And I would say the same way for most of the groups that I've worked with, but I think it just comes down to that communication, just having that open line, like you say, even if it's just a few times throughout the season too, just a quick chat, it kind of helps answer any questions they may have or put their mind at ease, or, oh, this guy cares. He knows what he's talking about, or I understand what they're doing now. And then, yeah, the reinforcement,
I think
that's
that,
important.
I mean, if you've got an assistant coach, right, if you're lucky enough to have an assistant coach, I would advise every coach to spend, 5-10 minutes of every game. Let your assistant coach deal with the game, because really there's not that much going on that you need to worry about. And just do a little, sideline walk. Go talk to every parent quickly. and just give them one thing that you're working on, right? Or one thing that you want their kid to work on, or one thing that their kid's doing well, right? And just kind of keep building up that like knowledge for the parent of, you know, oh, hey, look, she's doing a really good. Did you see her staying in her space there or defending that space, right? Because parents they're typically boot it or go get the ball, right? And that's counter to what we want most of the time. So we need to tell the parent, like, yes, look, you see your kid standing there on this side of the field? They're doing a good job because that's what I want them to do. Oh, so when I yell, go get the ball, and they run over to this side, that's not what you want? Yeah, absolutely, I don't want that. So without telling them don't say that, you kind of plant that seed that, hey, your kid's doing an awesome job right now because they're staying over that side, they're guarding the space. You watch when the ball comes. And it's almost, I think, a better way of doing that. You know, instead of that, well, don't say that. It's almost, I try to highlight what the benefits of not saying those things that we want them to avoid. But I think, like you said, like the more you can do it. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm in that position now that I have enough coaches and, you know, some practices, that's all I'll do. Or some game days we have, that's all I'll do is just go and talk to the parents. But that also, I think, helps with that car ride home problem, right? Because now the parent has more things to talk to the kid about, and they're becoming more educated about the game. So it's definitely helped us.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think the overall positive that I can take too, even though I mentioned that there was probably 2 teams out of all those games that I watched, still though, the overall quality of play from the kids that were out there was higher than what I would have perceived it to be watching a handful of years ago, even just a couple of years ago. So, I mean, and what we can contribute that to, I don't know. I mean, I think social media is a massive resource. Yeah. You should know through Twitter. I mean, you have a presence on there, and then there's so many other good coaches. And even if I'm the type that I think you can learn from anything, even if you don't agree with it, you know, there's a lot of great minds out there that'll put stuff out, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, I don't 100% agree with this, but I do like these concepts of this. So now what could I do to make it to where I agree with it wholeheartedly and I can run this? And I will do that kind of stuff.
I think it's just from what our conversation, I think that one of the things I'm thinking about is how can we, from the high school to the club down to that rec program, like how can we work to help improve the bottom level, right? And get more people into the bottom level that want to be there.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a matter of effort and just getting people bought in, I guess. And really, you talked about that. I think the club, we talked about culture. Culture is definitely a big key, but I think clubs can be to blame too, massively. Yeah. Because if you're not really doing anything from a director of coaching or technical director standpoint in all the clubs, I mean, there's guys that we connect with that you follow, that I follow, that I could pull up and name some names, and they're asking questions about, you know, what's your club structure look like, because ours isn't anything like this. And they have one team and one coach that's excelling and the team's playing really well. And then, you know, maybe they don't advance and they keep coaching with the same team or the same level of group. And then everybody else is still on different pages, and it becomes hit and miss. And I think a lot of it is just wanting to get out there and just say, this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be at 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Here's the steps. Here's the progressions. Here's the foundations for each. Here's how each activity will translate into this when they're older. And you keep building off those building blocks. But it has to be more than a one-time thing too, because people are going to they might take it and flip through something and drop it. You know, where us, we have we have not as much lately, but we were normally having almost monthly, especially when our director of coaching came, where we would have meetings with the coaches and we would go through PowerPoints and slides and video clips.
I think we got to find a way to try and take that and implement that at every rec level. So
yeah, that would make things a lot different.
that's the goal. But yeah, so Rob, we'll do this again for sure, man. I gotta jump off. I got another person I'm gonna chat to, but no, I enjoyed the discussion, and I'll catch up with you. I'll follow up with you later today, and then we'll do.
Yeah, we'll have to get on. We never even really got into much any type of session type stuff.
All right, well that's we'll do that next time, man.
All
Next
right, for
Friday.
sure.
All right, Rob.
All right,
Have a
man.
great
Appreciate
weekend,
it.
brother. Take care, man.
All right, man.
Bye.
See